Why is care and education with infants and toddlers important? The rapid growth that unfolds during the first 3 years of a child's life is unprecedented and establishes a developmental foundation for future years to build off of. The experiences infants and toddlers have are related to short-term and long-term growth trajectories. Not only are the infant and toddler years associated with school readiness, but the first 3 years are also a wise investment for long-term academic and developmental outcomes. School readiness for infants and toddlers? Until very recently, the majority of work in school readiness has focused on the preschool period. In fact, the term school readiness itself is controversial when applied to infants and toddlers. School readiness often brings about the idea of formal academics such as letters and numbers, presented in ways that are not developmentally appropriate for infants and toddlers. However, as the term school readiness became more broadly defined and the research base documented the important foundation for later learning established during the first 3 years expanded, families, programs serving infants and toddlers, and policymakers have increasingly accepted that school readiness really begins in infancy. Several organizations have issued guidance and developed resources for programs, practitioners, and families on how to think about and offer services to support the foundations of school readiness in infants and toddlers. For example, in 2013, the National Association for the Education of Young Children, NAEYC, published a book entitled Developmentally Appropriate Practice, Focus on Infants and Toddlers, devoted to defining and applying the concept of developmentally appropriate practice for teachers and caregivers working in infant and toddler programs. The Office of Head Start has also provided guidance to programs through developing the Framework for Programs Serving Infant and Toddlers and Their Families and the Parent, Family, and Community Engagement PFCE framework. The figure on the screen presents the framework for programs serving infants and toddlers. An important aspect of the Early Head Start framework is the relationship between the provision of high-quality services and children's growth and development. The quality of early childhood service is multidimensional and encompasses not only characteristics of staff, but also the quality of the interactions and relationships among staff members and the children and parents with whom they work. States have also published expectations for infants and toddlers and their caregivers. As of 2019, all U.S. states have developed early learning development guidelines for preschool children, 3 to 5 years old. And most states, although not all, have early learning development guidelines that either include or are separate for infants and toddlers. The infant and toddler period is an opportunity to support young children's optimal development and to set a positive path for school readiness and lifelong success. It is also true that all opportunities involve risk. A risk with applying the concept of school readiness to infants and toddlers is the temptation to funnel practices developed for preschoolers to children under 3 years of age. To avoid this risk, attention to the unique developmental characteristics of infants and toddlers and purposeful reflection is required to ensure activities and interactions are age appropriate.